Enrico Guzzo from DG Agri. I am responsible for the blueprint, so I'm not responsible for the Pact for skills, but for organizational reasons I will do the presentation today. Then there is a part from my colleague Giuseppe Pellegrino from DG RTD. That's the second part of the presentation. And finally, there are two expert colleagues, one from DG Grow and another from DG Ample, in case there are questions regarding the implementation of the Pact for Skills, as the information is really fragmented among different services. And then I invited also other colleagues from other services, but finally I'm not fully sure they were available to join. So the Pact for Skills is based on the idea to build a network to join forces regarding reskilling, upskilling for jobs in different sectors with different ideas. So it could be lifelong learning or a very different approach. From the point of view of DG Agri, I can say, as I am in the coordination unit dealing with rural development programs, that quite often there is for EFRD, so rural development funds, at the very start of the program, we have a good allocation of budget for training skills in rural areas. And then we receive my unit quite often amendments at a later stage, because money is moved from, it's a national level or local level or regional level, is moved from training for skills in rural areas to something that is more tangible, such as investment in machineries and something similar in rural areas. And that's a pity, because the benefit of skills in rural areas, like in other sectors, is something on the long term. You can see the benefits on the long term. But finally, there are local, national, regional decisions very, very often, more and more often, to move money from this idea of increasing the skills in rural areas to something more tangible, so tangible investments. Anyway, based on the Pact for Skills, we have this idea to increase the number of people, adults with more qualified profiles. So there are about, the basis of this data received from DG Ample, mostly 50 million low qualified adults. And at Porto Social Summit on the 7th of May, there were targets so something more real, tangible, to try to have by 2030 an employment rate of at least 78% in the European Union. And at least 60% of adults participating in training every year. Then on this basis, could be something for the private organizations, public organizations. There are different possible stakeholders in this great project that is the Pact for Skills. What is important, I think, is the orange part, concrete commitments, because the Pact for Skills, you can register and it's very good, but that's the documentary part, it's the initial step, creating networks. But then it's very important to have something real, commitments at the level of companies, stakeholders. So something to say, well, I would like to have a certain percentage of people with a certain level of training, or they must be retrained, whatever is the final objective, but to have also concrete, tangible commitments, setting deadlines, to have a final something real, a KPI, performance indicator, something real, tangible after the theoretical part. So there are different ecosystems depending on the sector. Here, the focus for me is on the agri-food sector, where we have two parts, and both of them are included in one partnership agreement. So plant and animal production, and then processing of food. They are built together. And there is one colleague from DG Grow who is the expert about this, in case you have questions. So the key theoretical principles of the Charter are promoting a culture of lifelong learning for all, building strong skills partnerships, monitoring skills in terms of supply, demand, anticipating skills needs. And it's also important working against discrimination and for gender equality. That's more and more important. And equal opportunities. There is also a focus on gender equality and the ongoing CAP CAP reform. So also the fourth part is very relevant in the agri sector. If you want to join the Pact, there is a link at the very end of the presentation in case you don't know. So that you need to set up the charter, and then you can read the key principles, and then it's very important to translate theoretical, very good engagements in something real, tangible, and concrete commitments, and then to monitor commitments to ensure that there is an efficient implementation. So this part for skills can be at the level of large-scale partnerships, national, regional, local level. It's really broad, and also in terms of European funding opportunities, there is a large scale of opportunities, some at national level, regional level. There is slides later with some more details. It's really a huge scenario. And again, the focus is on, for this part, for skills to create a networking opportunities, knowledge hub via webinars, seminars, learning activities. And I would like also to mention about that, probably some of you already know it very well. There is a system called AKIS, that is the Agricultural Knowledge Innovation System. The idea is for the agricultural sector to create only for the agricultural sector, agricultural stakeholders, so universities, researchers, farmers, vice versa, a network at national level called AKIS, and there are also seminar, webinars specifically in the agricultural sector related to that, to create some more networking opportunities to share knowledge between different stakeholders. Only in the agricultural sector. And there are huge differences between member states. In France and Germany, this AKIS system works very well. In Ireland, it's very strong. It's quite weak and fragmented in other countries, such as Malta, Greece, Italy. And there is more and more emphasis. There is a unit in the JAGRI dealing with this to try to create via webinars. Of course, in the past it was conference, real conference, face-to-face. So now there are a lot of webinars to put more and more emphasis also for the future for these other networking opportunities. So there are already Pact for skills relevant stakeholders such as Microsoft, Nestlé, Enel. There are many stakeholders, but it's also important to keep in mind that in the agricultural sectors, I think it was mentioned already in one of the previous presentations about the food industry. Anyway, it's very, very relevant, the role of small farms, because there is a huge percentage of small farms in Europe, so it's also important to take them into account. So quite often decisions are taken at local, national level, and so it's easier to get European funds if you have a very big farm with huge financial opportunities, lawyers, but if you work in a little farms, it could be more difficult to get to local bureaucracy and finally to get European funds, even if there are plenty of opportunities. Agri-food sector, there is also for the Pact for Skills, there was a round table, the last one was in February 2021, and here there is the link. I guess that the presentation will be sent to all participants, so if you are interested, if you go to the link at the bottom of this slide, we have more details about this Pact for Skills roundtable, where there are different representatives of industry, sector organizations, social partners, etc. It's another opportunity to create synergies. And now I give the floor to my colleague Giuseppe Pellegrino from DGRTD for this part regarding the bio economy.
Yes, many thanks, Federico. Good evening, everyone. Many thanks to Remigio for inviting us to display these slides about Pact for Skills. And here, on behalf of the DG Research Innovation, I will present something that is complementary to the Pact of Skills, and it's the EU Bioeconomy Strategy and its action plan. And I think some of you know already, for example, the CAPI that presented before us. What is the bioeconomy strategy all about? Well, it's a strategy that has sustainability and circularity at its core, and has, I would say, a really system-wide approach. And for instance, in this strategy, there are different actions that focus on also strengthening the scale up the bio-based sectors. And for that, we really need also to make sure that workers' skills are in line with businesses. And for that, if you can please move to the next slide, Federico. We have a dedicated actions, which is action 2.4, which is about promote education, training, and skill across the bioeconomy. We all know that if we want to achieve this transformative change that is outlined in the European Green Deal, if we want to have the green growth happening, we need also to train and work a lot in training workers. So with this action, we want really to support the networking of education and training providers, and see if there are gaps between what industries are looking for, and if the educational providers are really in line with these requests. And for that, we will launch just this couple of days ago. We launched a study that will look into that. But it's going to be a 15-month study, so we will have the result next summer, and we will see what the tangible action will be for that in order to support this change, to provide the necessary tools for member states in order to work on skills for the bioeconomy sector. And if you can please move to the next slides. This is happening tomorrow and the 24th. So I really invite to follow, to attend to these 2 days, which are very interesting and informative about what is happening in research in Europe. And we have our session. There is Europe's future is the bioeconomy, as all we know, and how can today's youth shape this transition. And we will discuss about also skills and how it's more about higher education and youth, but I assume that skills will be also part of it, as digital skills, for instance. And this is it from my side. Thanks, Federico.
So here there is a summary about what I mentioned before. So there are plenty of opportunities in terms of European funds. You see Horizon 2020, and now we have the Recovery Resilience Facility. So up for the period 21-25, we have 61.5 billion euro for the European Social Fund Plus. probably now it's even more for the RRF, 672 billion euro. So plenty of opportunities. And my experience is just what I said for the another opportunity is the European Rural Development Funds, where on the top of what I said before, there are also different approach in different member states, meaning you have few member states, for example, Denmark, but not only, where they have a very good, competent level of local advisors, and they take advantage of European opportunities more easily than other countries. Maybe they have also a different level or a very low level of local bureaucracy for using funds for skills and training in rural areas. But it's very few countries like that. For most countries, finally they move the European funds for rural areas from training skills to something else, and that's a pity. And that's a pity. And for the future, the idea is to give member states for this fund even more flexibility. So it's really something that should be treated at local level, trying to increase the use of training skills. One option we also suggested in the past to member states is to make a compulsory training before using fund. Meaning you want to use funding opportunities for a specific intervention, then first you oblige farmers or other stakeholders to follow a training using European money, and then they are allowed to use European money to buy machinery or to do other investments. So in that way, they have some knowledge via the training of some specific problems. It could be for pesticides or whatever is the investment, and then they can use European money for tangible investments. So we already gave suggestions, but for that there are very different local national approaches and very different level of bureaucracies. So European funds, public funds, private funds, it's good to find a good combination between the three options. And if you want to have more information, here is the link for the Pact for Skills. And finally, I put before a question in the chat. It was for the presentation for the food industry sector, but actually it's an open question to everybody, because I think it's good to have these webinars also to know from my side if, in your opinion, there is something more or not really, nothing more that could be done in this domain from the point of view of European level. So I put the question in the chat because I was listening to the presentation of Jonas, but it's an open question in case anybody wants to put a comment, consideration, or whatever you think about this. So that's all, and if you have questions, as I said before, I'm here, and there are also two expert colleagues to reply to your questions, meaning regarding the implementation of the Pact for Skills. So thank you.